Chapter 20. The Reunion. Rudra collected his sword lying on nearby grounds. He weighed the blade in his right hand, then lifted high to pounce it on the Gajradhan's neck, beheading his head from his dead body. He then marched towards Madhavi's shelter tent, hanging the bleeding head, pouring perennial drops of blood and forming a damp track on arid sand. Madhavi sat on an elevation, her shin bandaged and other scratches covered in pale yellow sandal turmeric paste. She was now well aware of all the instances that had taken place on the battlefield. As she saw Rudra standing in front of her holding the evil's head, whom she perhaps had hated the most and so much wanted to end, she stared at the spot. It was a stare that communicated her former pain. She rose but stumbled, bruising her left elbow against the rough wooden pole fixed to hold the tent. Rudra stood still to let her gain her conscience, to realize the reality of every moment. Madhavi paused and stood in a state of combined emotions, for instantly bursting into acute explosion or shedding her long drawn-out tears that had been perished for years. Rudra ascribed the slashed head near her feet, looked ostentatiously on her face, almost in a state of supplying comforting vibes to her, and left the tent in a short while. The very moment left a peculiar sense of contention in both of her mind and heart. The battlefield lay quiet, for it was the now graveyard of unburied with the dead clangor of the swords. The shouting of the slaughter was hushed. Silence lay on the red-stained sand. Survivals started to return to embrace to their homes, seeking to quench their thirst for love, warmth and solace. And so lay the court of Surashila, quite as abandoned palace, but only for a few days till their injuries recovered a bit to let them carry on with the future transactions. On the 7th day after battle, it retrieved its glory with the presence of courtiers, kings and queens. King Vajraveer posed to his throne with Vishnukarma on his right chair, along with King Baldeva before the long queue of other dignitaries on both the sides and Queen Balakrishna on his left. Positioning himself in the same responsible description, Rudra stood down near the steps of the throne right before where Madhavi was be-seated. The court broke its silence with Vajraveer's order to call Queen Kusumati. Only Vishnukarma could understand the reason behind his order, but he was sure of this instance to take place. Kusumati came and stood in the court right in the front of King Vajraveer. Effulgence of her bodily glow bedazzled every eye present there. Walls carved with silver coverlets and colorful ruby and emerald stones reflected her charm in bright radiance as it seemed they failed to absorb it. Vajraveer looked deep in her eyes, unfurling the folds on his perplexed forehead with every word he spoke. I hold no spites or grudges against you, my queen. Neither do I possess any right to question you in this court. Yet I am unable to suppress my inquisitiveness to know about your presence on the battleground. However, I do acknowledge, hadn't it been you to implant your powers to swell into Rudra, we would most probably have lost this war. Hearing King's wondrous words, Rudra gazed deeply at Kusumati, whom he still considered some supernatural godly creature, wondering what might lead her to do so for him. While Vajraveer continued his string of queries, peering earnestly at Kusumati, you are a pure creation of Almighty, and the powers you possess are unfathomable. Yet you never repelled my folly. Nevertheless, your affection has also been unbiased, completely detached from all passions and positions. Then why that sudden split of emotions for someone you had never even seen before? Please tell me, my queen, as I promise whatever you say will be abided with respect and devotion by all present here. And this is the very word of a king and your husband." Vajraveer finally paused to let Kusumati perk her take and say something in order to quell their curiosity. Kusumati, who stood gracefully of her invincible charm, looked at Vajraveer and said, "Our esteemed ruler, my respected king and dear husband, I endured your hatred for years in guilt and disgrace, which lasted only till I devoted myself fully to the service of God of gods, who is the comforter to the lonely, symbol of love and justice, compassion and protection, and the proprietor of everything, Lord Krishna. In those consciousness, I journeyed the pastures of enlightenment and pure knowledge, and so understood that what happened was neither in my control or yours, but in sheer control of destiny that could be altered only beyond contamination by sinful reactions. The Supreme Lord said, to give up the results of all the activities is called renunciation by the wise, and that state is called the renounced order of life by great learned men. Hence, I did not show up until my sole Dharma, my ultimate duty towards some crucial responsibility, called for it." "Which Dharma do you refer to, my queen? Dharma of a wife for her husband, or Dharma of a queen for her kingdom? Kindly enlighten us more with your absolute wisdom," asked Mahamatya Shri Kripahanscharya in subtle, gentle tone. Kusumati stayed evenly tranquil for a few moments. The entire court, totally engrossed in her, remained soundless, waiting vigorously for her to propound further. It was neither the call for Dharma of a wife for her husband or for Dharma of a queen for her kingdom, but it was call of Dharma of a mother for her child. The very words of Kusumati stunned the growth of the thoughts in everyone staged in the court except Vishnukarma, who were told about the truth already by one of Kusumati's close friends, Jayanti, before she left for heavens after a cureless disease, in confession to not only partner Kusumati in concealing the fact, but also committing a ruthless act against a newborn child. But before dying, she had confined him into her last wish to not reveal the fact to anyone. Perhaps this might have been the very reason for Vishnukarma's sober concern for Rudra, since the time he had known about his domicile and his foster parents. Kusumati proceeded further to strain more on her unsavoring confrontation. It was call of Dharma of an unfortunate mother who had abandoned her beloved child amidst the forest of Kaverivan. Having said that, Kusumati looked into the eyes of Rudra, who stood bewildered yet convinced with what he had heard from Queen Kusumati. But only Lord Krishna knows. I could be nothing than just being a helpless mother all these years, who prayed for her son's security all in her day and night prayers, who breathed a silent sigh of relief every time she saw him in 30 days and smiled only with tears in eyes. I wish I could have kissed your forehead till the eternity, my son." Kusumati sobbed under her swollen bosom that congested in traction of strangling air down to her lungs and back through her wiggling nose as tears rolled down her cheeks, expressing her profound love for her son, Rudra. Lord Pavan appeared in the view to render his support to shattered Kusumati, settling gradually on the floor with his featherly light feet. "I, Lord Pavan, stand here in your court with joined hands to entreat your forgiveness, King Vajraveer, leaving it totally up to your sheer discretion whether you would like to forgive me or punish me." He then slowly turned to Kusumati. "Your penance has been served enough. And after having seen you donating all your strength you accumulated from your year-long trance to our son, I would set you free from all hostility I have kept for you so far. You have thoroughly proved yourself to be a gracious mother instead. If, truth be told, gods are really proud of you, Kusumati." He then gave an affectionate look to Rudra, walked to him and embraced him tightly in his arms, murmuring how much he had cared for him as he had always watching over him since his birth. "I was there with you every single moment. On the land of Kaverivan, where you ran, toddling with your tiny feet. On the branch of that banyan tree where you loved playing your mesmeric flute. In the flowing stole of young ladies who left no chance tempting you with their captivating smiles. In your brewing herbs and weeds with which you performed the noble cause. In your combat with that evil on the battlefield. During the course of your enlightenment by the great and wise Vishnukarma, and even in every beat of your heart that keeps pounding for this young maiden." Looking at Madhavi, "We were never apart, my son, and I guarantee my presence for your protection till the eternity." Madhavi looked back in awe but sat hushed, refraining to deny the very fact. After having said what he had come for and expressing his utmost love for his son, Lord Pavan disappeared in a surge of swift air. While Vajraveer sat quiet, unable to reckon what to say at that moment when circumstances ran out of every possible control in such unusual transcription, unless Vishnukarma urged Vajraveer to remunerate Rudra and Kusumati's selfless sacrifice and immolation for him and his kingdom, and let the bygones abscond from his heart and mind. As said, whatever happens, happens for a reason, conditioned by law of nature and will of God. King Vajraveer broke his silence. A king has to speak for his nation and people before speaking of himself. And I owe to you both for a very fair reason of showing chivalry and benevolence at every step of your pious exposition for the safety of the palace on the battlefield and keeping respect for my relations. I, King Vajraveer, from this moment hereon propound to annihilate all past events in the lieu of considering a better future in a worthy heir." He gently looked at Rudra, conferring his wholehearted trust in him. Kusumati moved forward to pluck Madhavi from her steady disposition, raising her from her chair. She then placed her hand gently in Rudra's, uttering words of assurance. "This has waited for long. A worthy heir deserves a worthy queen, both equipoised in same amount of wisdom and power." Dissenting to Kusumati's decision, some priests and ministers vented their conflicts about a widow to get married again and be the queen of kingdom. "This is sinful, uncouth, against our culture for a widow to forget her husband and marry someone else. What impact would that deed leave on our society, when especially done by the royalty itself? This is crude and hard to accept," echoed many voices together in such rumbled commotion that no one could reflect on how to curb it to pacify the situation until Rudra endeavored to oppose their sleazy opinions. A married woman is bound by decree to her husband while he lives. But if fate forbids her destiny to continue the lock of marriage by any way of leaving her as a widow or abandoning her single, for any selfish mean, she is still an independent individual to live freely up to her own will, thus released from all prohibitions. While when it comes to a superwoman, whom I witnessed fighting in the battle like a great warrior and standing fearlessly for her kingdom's defense, I suspect myself of being worthy enough for her hand. Turning then towards Madhavi, Hence, I seek your consent on this proposal. Only if you think of me eligibly deserving to stand by your side, then accept me as your husband, O holy princess." Madhavi, liberated from all unsaid inhibitions, shifted towards Rudra, offering her hand in his with due honor and dignity, and stood pridefully by his side, confronting dubious and skeptical faces. King Baldeva admired Rudra's chivalry and respect. "You are a gentleman in every true sense, my boy. With no hesitation or doubt, I welcome you in our family by approving of your will to marry my dearest daughter Madhavi." King Vajraveer too gave his willful consent and appealed to his revered priests and ministers to abide by this fated will of God. The court stood in their honor and blessed the couple with best of their blessings. Vishnukarma's words echoed in the universe while he pronounced Rudra the great healer. "We will not only have just a ruler, but a worthy leader for the kingdom of Surishila, who would set more reforms and examples for humanity to reside in the world of love, compassion, devotion, harmony, and peace. In Madhavi, the kingdom will have an independent, courageous, gallant queen, the symbol of devotion, compassion, and sacrifice. That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all existence, undivided in the divided, is knowledge in the mode of goodness. A person who sees one spirit soul in every living being, whether a demigod, human being, animal, bird, beast, aquatic or plant, possesses knowledge in the mode of goodness. So says Shri Krishna. Glory to Rudraksha, glory to Madhavi, glory to Rudra Madhavi.